Hi friends, I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to a new sketchbook session video. I'll link the playlist in the description area if you're interested in watching the other videos in this series. For this video, I'll be creating outside my comfort zone by working with messy painted layers. I've mentioned before that occasionally I like working when I'm uncomfortable because I think it helps me to grow as an artist. Also, having a sketchbook practice helps to play and explore with different styles and techniques without any pressure. I'll be working in the same older book that I've used before. One more thing, the following sketching session will have a mix of narration and music. So let's get started. Quick reminder that I put wax paper behind the pages I'm working on in the sketchbook because I didn't glue any of the pages together to thicken them. If the paint seeps through the page, the wax paper will protect the other pages. Here are the tools I brought out to use. Besides old and new paintbrushes, there's a metal spatula and gift cards in different sizes. I haven't thought out which paint colors I'll be using, but I do know that most of the paint will be matte acrylic. It helps to avoid the painted pages from sticking together. I chose this spread because it has paint already on it. Sometimes an already painted page or spread helps to jumpstart the process. Some or all this paint layer may be covered once I start working on the page, and that's okay. For this spread, I'm starting by applying the paint in blobs. This isn't my usual style. It's a great way to loosen up when painting. I applied the light yellow-orange blobs in a thick application because I'm using this thin, broken paintbrush handle to scrape into the paint. I like the look that comes from this technique. I'm using this off-white paint instead of white for this spread, partly because the original page is off-white and partly because I want it to have a muted color palette. Some of the orange paint mixed with the off-white, and I'm okay with that. It's a happy accident that can lead into a good transitional color. I won't be using the scrape paint technique on all the paint colors. Using it sparingly is a great way to add texture detail. Overdoing this technique will cause it to have an all-over pattern, which is okay if that's what you want. I want it to be an accent detail. Adding more off-white along the original page and the gray area helps to blend them together. It's looking light, so I'm adding dark green in a few areas to help balance the design. I like having all three values in my artwork, even if it's just a sketch. I'm starting to cover the gray paint layer with a thin amount of off-white to tone down the contrast. Adding a small amount of orange in the upper left area helps to balance the design. I like using a gift card to apply the paint. You have less control over the final shape. You can apply the paint in a blob shape, or you can use it to drag the paint across the page. At this point, I felt the spread needed some slightly structured elements like these loose circles. I used a hairdryer to dry the paint because I wanted to make sure the loose circles had a solid black color. Next, I'm adding more black paint with a gift card to continue to balance the design. I'm fine-tuning the design by adding more of the light green and toning down the dark green. It's still dark, but not as dark as the black elements. I felt like the design was not cohesive. It looked like the elements were floating on the page. By adding off-white around the outside areas in thick and thin layers helps to make it cohesive. I consider this spread finished. The last step of adding off-white paint was needed for cohesion. Besides the messy painted layers being outside my comfort zone, this light value leaning spread is the same. Let's continue on to the next one. I liked having a painted ground layer in the first spread, so I decided to do that for this next one. I decided to use black this time. My plan is for this spread to have a strong dark design. As you can see, I sped up this part of the video. In real time, I was very careful not to get any of the paint on the previous spread that I just finished. I used a hair dryer to completely dry the black paint. I didn't want any of it to blend in with the paint colors that I'll be using on top of it. This time I'm starting by painting loose geometric shapes. I want this spread to have a different design than the previous one. Just having a strong overall dark feel isn't enough. Some of the elements should be different as well. Except for the orange elements that I consider mid-tone value, I'm adding light value elements at this point for contrast. I know that these elements may be partially or completely covered up as I add more layers. It's all part of my process. I'm adding a second paint layer to some of the elements to strengthen them. I didn't want any of the black paint to show through. Like the thin black circles in the previous spread, I want to add at least one thin element. Adding a very thin green continuous line helps to connect the other elements together. Now that this layer is in a good place, I'm adding dark value paint for the next layer. I'm being mindful that I want the final spread to be dark leaning. Even though the dark green blends into the black ground, I think it adds to the design. I really like the texture that came from scraping away some of the dark green on top of the orange element. I'm making a bold move by adding white paint to the spread. Scraping away some of it helps to tone down the stark white look. As you can see with this second white element, the paint layer was too thin, so I couldn't get a good texture from scraping it. This time I tried the metal spatula to scrape the white paint and it gave a different look. The squiggly line is more pronounced. Also, I like what happens when the paint on the spatula is dragged outside the edge of the white element. I decided to add another layer of white paint to this element and scrape into it with the spatula. It looks much better now. I haven't used a spatula in this way before. I may not have known to use it if I hadn't been playing in my sketchbook. This is a great time to try the what ifs. I'm adding black paint accents in certain areas that I feel are too light. Again, I'm being mindful that I want this spread to be dark leaning. One final detail, I decided to add 2 thin pink marks on the left side to balance the pink on the right side of the spread. Talk about a spread that's outside my comfort zone. There's a lot going on. I kept thinking to myself, trust the process. I can see using some of the techniques and elements in other artwork, such as using the spatula to scrape away paint. I like the lower left area where some of the dark green was scraped away to show the orange underneath it. Also, I like the thin continuous green line and the shape of the 2 thin pink lines. Let's go on to the final spread. For this final spread, I wanted to have a light design. Again, I'm starting by adding a layer of paint over the whole spread. This time I'm using a bright color. I must admit this spread will be more in line with my design style. Sometimes when working outside my comfort zone, I like to finish the sketching session by creating in my style. I'm still applying messy painting layers, but the design won't be as busy. As you can see, I'm applying this layer of paint with a gift card. This is a technique that I enjoy using. Even though the spread will have a light design, it needs to have some dark values as well. As I've mentioned previously, I like having all 3 values in my artwork, but these values won't always be balanced. I like what's happening on the right side of the spread with the paint remnants from the gift card. I didn't want to apply a dark paint on top of it. Using this light blue paint adds a large amount of color in this area while not covering up the interesting texture going on underneath it. I'm using this light yellowish orange paint to add a light value as well as adding an accent color in this area. The placement of this light pink paint is being used to reinforce the overall light value I want for this spread. I want the paint all the way to the edges of the pages, so that's why I'm painting it, then dragging it with a gift card. I'm going back and forth with adding this paint to get the look that I want. I want it to look like drag paint. Also, I want some of the areas to be solid and some to be transparent. I won't be covering the whole surface with this light pink paint, just the top and bottom, but it won't be evenly distributed. The unpainted area will be slightly above the middle section of the spread. I prefer a design that's off-center. I thought this spread was finished, but as I was editing the video, it looked like something was missing. I decided to come back in with the light yellow-orange paint as another layer on top of the pink. I chose this color because it's light in value, so it'll keep the light feel of the design. I felt that the pink areas looked a bit flat, and adding another light color would add depth. I didn't want to cover the pink completely. Here's the finished spread. I'm glad I added the light yellow-orange paint. It was just enough color to add depth to the design. I hope you enjoyed watching me create these messy painted layer spreads. I encourage you to have a sketchbook practice so you have a place to play and explore different techniques and styles. Let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this video. Take care.